Hi, and welcome again to this series of tutorials. It was supposed to be titled Inputs, but I then changed it to Console IO because in C, input and output are very tightly related. We'll see how. So, C gives you two types of IO facility, that is through its standard library. One is keyboard input and display output. Earlier it may be used to be punch cards and so on. Now it's keyboard and file IO. File means your disk files. Standard library supports these two. Note that even though we say C supports displaying output on your screen, we have used printf throughout our tutorials, but printf has to go through a complex process of sending the data to display drivers, which in turn processes, which in turn reads fonts and anti-aliasing, and there are lots of things involved before it actually gets rendered to your screen. It is not simple that okay, printf says I is equal to 5 and I is equal to 5 is printed. There are a lot more things involved. There is a spelling mistake. No built-in support for mouse or other input devices like joystick or touch screen. However, libraries are available to do that. Can you guess why C does not have mouse or other input devices support? Any idea? Well, the answer is pretty easy. C was developed in 1970s. At that time, these things were not there. No mouse, no joystick, no touch screen. So C didn't have this. Now, C functions can be categorized on the basis of string length they operate on. Now, strings may be one character, strings may be multi-character, they can be arbitrarily large, right? So, the functions can operate on single character or multi-character. Note that we have set the topic as console IO, so we will not deal with file IO. Now, at this point of time, let me tell you something, or rather, we will see this in next slide. These functions can also be categorized on two more types. One category of functions operate only on standard strings, and second type of functions, they operate on any generic file stream. They will operate on standard streams as well as they will operate on file streams. When I say stream, what do you understand by a stream? You think stream like a continuous flow of data. That data is always coming in and always going out. Say, for example, I say printf, my name is XYZ. Then it's a continuous flow of characters. MY space NAME. So it's a stream. It's a standard output stream. Continuous flow of characters. While a file, a disk file, is a contiguous sequence of bytes. When you read that, you actually do not read from disk. That file is first loaded into memory and then you read memory byte contents. That is also a byte stream. Operating systems typically provide very low level functions to operate directly on files, and there can be various types of files. For example, it can be a block device file like hard disk. It can be a character device file like a sound card. It can be a link like a shortcut in Windows, right? It can be a socket like your internet client server socket, your web browser and your web server. So there can be multiple types of files. But when you generalize this as a file and you have a generic method to read and write to these files in a generic manner, you are basically abstracting the concept of files. I don't want to distinguish between, say, my students. Say, I am teaching 40 students, but I don't want to know them by their name, because names may indicate your religion. But when I abstract you as my student, then it does not matter who you are just a student. Similarly, streams are a way to abstract files. And once you abstract, you can have very powerful functions which will allow you to do advanced I/O on these streams. There are three standard streams. Standard input, or in other words keyboard, having a value of 0. You see where the value of 0 is set. stdout, standard output, or display, that is your monitor. Typically, most of the time it is monitor. Sometimes you can send it to printing, having a value of 1. Standard error should have been small s. Typically it is display having a value of 2. But you can redirect it or discard standard error. Now I will take you to a whirlwind tour of the library functions of stdio. Okay, so first I said stdin. Let's try to see where stdin is. So I right click this, say open declaration. So it says okay. So this tells me there is some structure. It's a reentrant structure. Reentrancy is a concept in multi-threading. Okay, so just before this I see, okay, I have this structure, so I think I have found it. Okay, so you see we have, these are declared, we have different names, and here is what we have got. 0 will be, 0th element is 0 and will be standard input, standard output and standard error and so on. Now all these functions, get C, put C, F put C, F get C, get char, put char, get S, F get S, lots of them. If you count them, there are 53 minus 8, 45 functions there. I will scroll slowly so that you can have a look. I'll stop and then you can type this in your Eclipse ID and mouse over and check what description you get. So I have stopped here for enough time. So I'll scroll down further, and now you can see the remaining functions. It's a big list, entire list of stdio. Mouse over these functions, or you can read the manual pages. I'll show you final ones. I request you to put a mouse over here and see the entire description, see the prototype. You may not understand prototype as of now, but eventually you will when we will be through with functions. So we have the entire list. One more way to do this is you open your Cvideo terminal. Let me make font a bit bigger. So you can see all these functions description as a manual page. Man get C. Read a character macro. Note that you should read the section 3 of manual page, not section 1. Some of these are in both the manuals. For example, possibly printf. Yes. So this is not the one which we are looking. This is in section 1. By default, it will open the earliest possible section. So you should open the third section of printf once again. Okay, we do not have it in third terminal. Let's try section 3, section 4. It should have been in third section. Don't think it is there. No. It should have been in third section because this section is for system calls. Section 1 is for system calls. Section 3 is for C standard library. Okay. You see, it says C also printf 3. So I think you need to install documentation of standard library, possibly then you will get it. Okay. So that is about manual pages and Eclipse. Now I had to say something more over here. When you take input in a program, will you blindly use the input? Think twice before using input provided by a user. Input validation is very important. I cannot stress this fact more than enough. I have seen programs crashing like anything just because they do not do input validation. Always check for correct and error-free input. Do not expect user to be perfect. For example, let me give an example. Suppose you wrote a program to add two numbers, a plus b, and print the output. And you say scanf, one variable, let's say I, and the user inputs boy. What are you going to do with that input? Did you verify that the input was really an integer? How do you discard input? How do you filter your input? These are all the questions which need an answer, and we'll see how to filter input and how to make robust programming, because unless you have proper input, your program is not going to be robust. You must withstand bad input. User will try to crash your program. It's called a specific type of testing is there for breaking the program. So I'm not a tester, so I rather do not know. So testers will try to break your program by giving all sorts of input, and if it breaks, it's not a good program. For example, let's say I have Microsoft Word running, right? You use Office, so I have Microsoft Word, and I said I'll press Control Alt Shift Caps Lock and hit F12. And should it crash? No, it should never crash. Does not matter what the input is, the program should always work. Suppose I have a mouse and I click all three buttons together. Should it crash? No, it should not. So I'll stop here, and in the next part I will continue with single character input, and then we will see multi-character and formatted input, and we will also see input validation, that how we can do input validation. Thanks. Happy coding.